Good day, everyone. I'm Erica H. Agsunod, and we will present our research title entitled Effectiveness of Home-Based Learning Towards Learning Development. Due to COVID-19 pandemic, schools have been forced to close, causing teaching and learning to shift entirely to the home. Many schools and institutions of higher learning have shifted to online, from face-to-face schooling to home-based learning to reduce the transmission of the virus. Home-based learning is not a new concept. It includes homeschooling, in which parents are primarily responsible for their child's education, as well as the distance education. Students must also complete learning activities of their own pace and over a period of time. Currently, the age of the students, their digital skills, computer access, the flexibility of learning modes, and home supports are all factors to consider when implementing HBL. However, the principles and underlying the instructional design or strategies of home-based learning implementation remain under fine. As many existing studies focus on either homeschooling or online learning, neither of which can provide a different experience than such a long-term and large-scale home-based learning. The experiment and innovations that occurred during this time period are what we believe are important to document in order to gain insights into how based learning affects the student's learning's development. The purpose of this paper is to address the research question, the effectiveness of home-based learning towards learning development. The statement of the problem, the study aims to know how effectiveness the home-based learning towards development of the student. Specifically, it aims to the following. Determine the effectiveness of home-based learning in terms of the following: performance, information, efficiency, and services. Second is identify the significant difference on the perception of the two groups of respondents, name, age, and year level. And lastly, determine the problems encountered of the students in home-based learning.
Significance of the study. This study will focus on the effectiveness of home-based learning towards development. This study will benefit the following: researchers and future researchers. Researchers, this study will help them improve their skills and gain more knowledge. Furthermore, this study allows researchers to learn and develop their research behaviors such as patience and others. Future researchers, this study will serve as the reference of the future researchers. Scope and delimitation. This study focuses on knowing the effectiveness of home-based learning towards learning development. Other factors outside of the scope is limited in this study.
Review of related literature. According to Justina 2022, the goal of the study was investigate the impact of blended learning and project-based learning on pre-service teachers' creative thinking in learning biology. This study used 76 biology education students as research subjects in a quasi-experimental design. The experimental class was taught using the BL and PJBL approaches, while the control class was taught using traditional methods. The parameters are 4 indications for innovative thinking. Pretest and post-test evaluations were used to obtain data. Bahasan 2020. The pandemic of coronavirus disease 2019 has caused the hardest hit people to relocate. Like the Italians, must drastically after their daily behaviors, beginning with social isolation and severe preventive measures. Self-isolation and measures, sport-related facilities and activities are also subject to these measures. The difficulty of engaging in physical activity at this critical juncture adds to the dangers. Staying at home all day is related with sedentary habits. The significance The importance of keeping an exercise regimen even at home is underlined in order to reduce the risk of heart disease. Inactivity has negative repercussions. According to Khan M.A. et al. 2020, the coronavirus disease pandemic forced many universities to apply online learning. The purpose of this study was to break down the online learning process in the early pandemic as well as effective and optimal online learning. The design of this research is descriptive qualitative research. The data were collected through observation, questionnaires, interviews, and documentation. Interestingly, this study found online learning using the WhatsApp group to be the most effective in the early COVID-19 pandemic. WhatsApp is easy, simple, and does not require a large data quota package. Through WhatsApp account, learning took place optimally because students and lecturers could communicate and share PowerPoint files, Microsoft Word files, voice notes, videos, and other learning resource links. The study recommends that other researchers uncover the solution to obstacle experienced by students in online learning and the development of other media to implement effective online lectures. According to the study of Zhang W. 2020, against the backdrop of the COVID-19 outbreak, an emergency policy initiative called Suspending Classes Without Stopping Learning was launched by the Chinese government to continue teaching activities as schools across the country were closed to contain the virus. However, there is ambiguity and disagreement about what to teach, how to teach, the workload of teachers and students, the teaching environment, and the implications for education equity. Possible difficulties that the policy faces include the weakness of the online teaching infrastructure, the inexperience of teachers, including unequal learning outcomes caused by teachers' varied experience, the information gap, the complex environment at home, and so forth. To tackle the problems, we suggest that the government needs to further promote the construction of the educational information superhighway. Consider equipping teachers and students with standardized home-based teaching and learning equipment. Conduct online teacher training, include the development of massive online education in the National Strategic Plan, and support academic research into online education, especially education to help students with online learning difficulties. Based to the study of Sedon MF 2021, this paper discusses the disadvantage of online learning in the context of studio practice based that focuses on practical skills. Discussions are made by looking at various angles of teachings and learning toward the online method and its implications for the field of visual art. Among the aspects discussed are social isolation, limited feedback, focus on theory rather on practice, lack of flexibility, and lack of transformational power. In general, online learning can only serve as a supporting method to the field of visual arts that focuses on the construction of practical skills, where conventional learning method, which is characterized by practice-based learning, is more appropriate and effective. Methodology. Research design. This study determines the effectiveness of home-based learning towards learning development. In this analysis, quantitative research is used as the research design because it uses questionnaire to gather data about varying subjects. This data aims to determine the effectiveness of home-based learning towards learning development. Sampling design and size. By using this sampling process, the sampling technique that the researcher used is in selection of participants is a simple random sampling that managed and picked the participants in this research study. The researcher listed the names of the target participants and randomly picked 20 names who is included in the study. Fishbowl technique. Target participants. The target participants of this study are the students who are affected by the pandemic. The target participants are 20 students. Data collection and methods. The first stage was the researcher will choose 20 students who are affected by the pandemic. The researcher will ask permission first to the chosen 20 students to conduct a research. Once the chosen participants approve, the researcher will now float some questionnaires to be answered by the participants. Once the participants are done, the researcher will now collect and record the questionnaire to be computed and analyzed. Data analysis and plan. The researcher used mean and standard deviation to determine the effectiveness of home-based learning in the terms of performance, information, efficiency, and service, and to identify the difference on the perception if the two groups of respondents. And the researcher also used this to determine the problems encountered of the students in home-based learning.